We've looked at the terracotta army of Emperor Qi. We've looked at Chinese landscape paintings. And remember, when we talk about China, we're talking about an immense geographical region whose borders have grown and shrunk over the centuries. We're talking about many different ethnic groups, religions, historical ruling parties, time zones, environments. And the important elements of Chinese thought for us specifically are Confucianism and Taoism. Buddhism comes from South India, as you remember. Confucius lived in the 6th century BCE, and Confucianism is not about the metaphysical, but it's about man's place in society and how to structure the best possible society. It's a very hierarchical system that places men over women, ruling classes over peasants, without any chance for upward social mobility. But it was believed that society could be perfect if people conduct themselves according to these principles. Taoism might seem at odds with Confucianism, but really it just has a different focus. It instead of thinking about society, it instead concentrates on man's relationship to the natural world. The Tao is often translated as the way. It's the way that people should live in perfect harmony with nature. And when we look at funerary work of ancient China, we'll see both elements of these two different ideologies. We're looking here at this long painted banner that was part of the tomb of a Han Dynasty member of the elite, the Marquise of Dai, Lady Dai. And at this time, elite members of the populace were preoccupied with their immortality and wanted to make sure that their tombs were outfitted very ornately. This banner hung over the innermost coffin of the wife of the Marquis of Dai, and it's a precursor to the hanging scrolls, those hanging painted landscape images, for example, that are prominent in Chinese culture. And the images that we see in the painted banner here can be interpreted in terms of both Confucianism and Taoism. There were, in fact, many Taoist and Confucian texts in the tomb complex itself. And we're going to start at first here at the top of the banner here in the heavenly realm. The sky is full of all of these mythical creatures that come from Taoist mythology. There is a raven standing over the sun in the top right corner, a toad dancing on the crescent moon in the left corner. There's celestial dragons flying through the sky. And then in the middle world here, we see the earthly realm. Confucian scholars are bowing down to the Marquise and her female attendants. And there's a use of hieratic scale to portray the hierarchy of Confucian society, that the Lady Dai, she is the most important figure here and thus the largest. The bottom of the banner shows us the actual funeral here. Men are performing rituals with bronze vessels to honor the deceased. And we see the deep respect for the elderly, honoring the dead. This absolutely comes from Confucianism. And so we have this blending of Taoism and Confucianism in this funerary work from the tomb of Lady Dai. Jumping ahead to the Tang Dynasty, this is an era where some ceramic sculptures were used for tomb decorations. The sculptures themselves were cast from molds and assembled in sections. So these were something this type of artwork would be more affordable, more widely available. And there's a 3-color glaze technique that we can see in these examples of Tang Dynasty tomb figures. They allowed the glaze to kind of drip and kind of run down the sides of these fired clay vessels to determine this desired decorative effect. And this color scheme is very typical here too, the kind of rich, almost emerald greens, the caramels, the browns. What we see here are examples of these ceramic figures. They're small. They're about 2 to 3.5 feet tall. And we see both creatures from the animal world. We see human figures. In fact, on the left, we see 2 different judges from the Chinese underworld. They hold record books because their job is to record the good and bad deeds of those who have died. And so these are exactly the figures that a member of the Tang elite would need to impress to ensure a happy afterlife. Other figures include this almost kind of monstrous hybrid figure here in the center. We see a horse, a camel with a groom and attendant here. We have Chinese civil servants in the background, and all of these, all of these figures here that are almost kind of protectors, or those figures that will accompany the deceased into the afterlife. Some of them coming kind of from the world of fantasy, and some of them very, kind of everyday animals. Horses and camels, tell us a lot about Tang society and the use of horses and camels along the Silk Roads throughout Asia to trade with other societies in South Asia and in as far away as the Mediterranean. We've already looked at Tikal, an important Maya city, and now we're going to move from Tikal that you see here in kind of northern Guatemala. We're going to move over to another Maya site, Palenque, in southern Mexico, in Chiapas. And we're going to focus on the tomb of King Pakal, who ruled Palenque from 615 to 683 CE. So he is exactly contemporary with the Tang Dynasty in China. He's contemporary with the Byzantine Empire in the Mediterranean. He initiated a series of ambitious architectural expansions at Palenque, and he lived and ruled in the palace, which you see marked on the map here at the top corner. Various royal ceremonies would take place in a Maya palace. There'd be a throne room. The palace, just like other parts of the city, was expanded. Every ruler wanted to leave his mark on the royal palace itself. And we're looking at a recreation of Pakal's tomb down below that's in the National Anthropology Museum in Mexico City today. This tomb comes from the Temple of Inscriptions in Palenque, which has been called the greatest Maya funerary pyramid. And it gets its name just because there are a lot of inscriptions on the inside that include a history of the city, and they tell us a lot about this ruler Pakal. The pyramid is similar to the pyramids we saw at Tikal, with that kind of telltale, that steepness, that really steep staircase in the front, the roof comb at the top, and the kind of steps, as opposed to, say, the smooth sides of the Egyptian pyramids. So at the lowest point of the pyramid is where the tomb of King Pakal was found. And let's take a look at some of these details here. On the left, you see a line drawing of the lid of his sarcophagus. And it's so complex that I think the line drawing actually makes it easier to see. It was carved out of a single piece of stone, and it shows us the king here who is suspended over the gaping jaw down below of the underworld. On the tomb lid, Pakal is positioned in an intermediary space. He has departed from the physical realm, but he's not yet part of the heavens. We see this large elaborate world tree above him, and then the underworld below him. So he's in this kind of transitional phase. One of the most spectacular parts of his tomb goods is this amazing jade mask that covered his body, including all of this very sumptuous jade jewelry as well. Also in the tomb was an idealized portrait of Pakal that we see above here, that associates Pakal with the Maya maize god. You can see his hair almost looks like almost looks like corn silks, and so we see this attempt here in the tomb to connect Pakal to the gods, to help him join that pantheon of the Maya deities.